I'm Katie Iverson. I'm the personal trainer at the Rec. All right, so I'm gonna go through my introduction like super fast. So a little about me. I'm a ACSM certified personal trainer. I work at the WSU Rec Center. You can see the screen, you can see all like the certifications and stuff that I have. So I'm like super important for this. I almost have my bachelor's in kinesiology and I'm getting my minor, have my minor in psychology. So I work with sport clubs, small groups, I do group fitness, one-on-one with clients. I specialize in clients with medical conditions, people that recover from injuries, people that are new to fitness, or all of the above, combinations of all those things. Probably the most like unique and like kind of important thing about this is that I can have like firsthand experience with going from like maybe not necessarily hating fitness, but just not having it be a regular part of my life. Didn't grow up being like just really exposed to like healthy eating and exercise, and now it's like a huge part of my life. Like it's literally my job, it's my major. So I feel like that helps me kind of understand where people are coming from and like those struggles you go through when you're trying to like make behavior changes a part of your life. Cool. All right, so there are 6 dimensions of well-being, and to think of health as just being kind of like that physical aspect. So like maybe if you have a cold or something like that, you're like, oh, I don't feel really healthy. There are a lot of other aspects to well-being beyond that, and that's what we're going to go over. So it's a cool little acronym called PIES with 2 E's and 2 S's, so it's pretty easy to remember. And that first one, that P, is the physical aspect. So kind of like I said, whether you're like sleeping enough, if you have a cold, you're sick, which, by the way, if my voice ever sounds like funny or I cough, like I am also getting over being sick / still kind of sick, so bear with me. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of like that physical side of things. Then we have the intellectual, so that's like your brain health. Not so much like the physical health of your brain, but just like the actual like cognitive, like your thinking aspect of it. So that learning, so like learning new skills, whether it's like in school or like you're reading, news articles, anything like that, anything to just like get new information in your brain. Then you have that emotional aspect. So this is like being able to express and share your emotions in a healthy way, but then also, I guess having people share their emotions with you in a healthy way. So there's that. The second E is environmental. So this could be like that literal sense of the environment is like you have clean water, clean air to breathe, you know, like how cold is it outside? I know those of us that are like in Pullman or other parts of the country, it is like ridiculously cold right now. And then there's also like other parts of the environment. So like maybe like what your home life is like, you know, do you like your roommates or not? And like that can also kind of affect those other aspects of your well-being as well. Then you have that social aspect. So this one's probably pretty easy to understand. So like socializing with your friends, your family, just any of that like communication aspect of well-being. And last, you have that spiritual aspect. So that like religious, or it may not be religious, just that kind of like connection with your spirituality. And the major takeaway with this is that all 6 of these dimensions need to be balanced in order to achieve full well-being or wellness. And if any of these are kind of like out of balance, it can kind of start to affect the other areas. You may not feel completely well as a result of that. So if you don't have any New Year's resolutions or goals yet, kind of keep those 6 aspects in mind when you create goals. Yeah. Anyway, so next we'll get on to goal setting. So these are ACE has this really great acronym to kind of help you go through and refine your goals to make a plan of how to actually achieve them, called SMART goals. So that S is going to stand for specific. And being a personal trainer, I get like oftentimes pretty vague goals, which is like totally fine, you know, to start with kind of like, you know, maybe being like, all right, I want to get fit, and then kind of narrowing it down from there. So don't think that like if your goals are maybe a little bit more like vague that it's a bad thing. You just need to like narrow it down further. So for example, with specific, if getting fit is one of your goals, One way to make that more specific is you may want to say, I want to meet ACSM's guidelines for at least 150 minutes of cardio per week. And I'm going to be going through these kind of fast since we're a little behind schedule. So sorry if I'm talking like super fast. Anyway, so measurable. So you want to have a way to actually like see how you're measuring that progress. So if you're like, okay, maybe you're like, I want to be able to lift more weight. So you're like focusing on strength training maybe. You want to have a way to actually like measure to see if you've actually met that goal. So like one way you might measure that is saying like, I want to be able to do a push-up. That A is going to stand for attainable. So to determine whether or not your goal is attainable, this is where you might want to get help from like maybe a professional in the field that your goal is in. So like if it's a fitness goal, you might want a personal trainer's help. If it's like a nutritional goal, maybe you want a dietitian. Maybe if it's like a mental health goal, you might want a therapist. So because it might be kind of hard to know if your goal is attainable if you don't understand like the science behind that. So for example, kind of on that like fitness and health side, you're like, I want to lose 30 pounds in a month. And that's not exactly like a safe and healthy way to lose weight. So a more attainable goal that would be healthy would be, I want to lose about 1 to 2 pounds per week. And then relevant. So you want your goal to be relevant as far as like it being important to you, but also important to like that big picture goal. So if you're like, I want to get fit, you may not want to have your goal be like, you know, maybe part of like that goal being like playing the piano. I know that's like a really like kind of random example and like, but kind of shows like that they're not really relevantly related. And then time bound. So you want to have enough time to complete the goal, but you don't want to have like too much time that you're not really like getting enough results. And you can have short and long-term goals, and those short-term goals can kind of help lead up to accomplishing that long-term goal. And it's totally fine to have a bunch of like maybe other short-term goals that really don't have to do with some big picture goal. But if you do have like a really large goal to accomplish, that would be a really good way to kind of like track your progress along the way, to have shorter goals, kind of like monthly, weekly, that help you stay on track.
So Katie, someone says they're confused on intellectual achievement.
Oh, sure. Like on, can I have maybe some more like clarifying like where we're confused?
Can you clarify where you're confused?
Watching the screen for typing.
Maybe you can guess.
All right, I'll kind of just like maybe like explain it in a little bit of a different way, and hopefully that'll cover the bases. So intellectual health is just kind of like that learning aspect, because it's another way you could think of it as just like in general learning. I don't know if that like makes sense or if that helps. How can you achieve
Intellectual health.
Oh, I see. So yeah, just kind of like constantly learning. There's like maybe not so like a wrong way or a right way. So I just would say continually like trying to expose your brain to like new information, and like there's a lot of different things you could learn. Like it's a little maybe hard for me to say without knowing like your background and like what you already know. So like I know for me, I'm kind of like a fitness nerd. Like I really like learning about fitness stuff. So like beyond even just my schoolwork, you know, a lot of times I like to read books or read articles that kind of have to do with that. But then I also like to learn about things that are a little outside of that scope. So I'm also interested in kind of like neuroscience type stuff. And so like my roommate is actually kind of studying like brain neuroscience-y kind of stuff. So I'm always like bugging her about like brain related questions. So that's actually kind of helps both of our intellectual health, because it's giving her a chance to kind of like brush up on and see like maybe where she needs more work to study on her stuff, but then it's also teaching me things that are new. So hopefully that helps. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll see. Let me know if you have more questions. All right, so now that we've kind of went over like the different aspects of well-being, and we went over some goal setting techniques, now we're going to go over behavior change. So the first step of this is identifying like which stage of behavior change you're in. So there are several different behavior change theories that kind of have their own different sets of stages. So this particular one we're going to go over has 5 stages. The first one's pre-contemplation, which none of you are probably in, because that would involve being like unaware that you need to change, or you tried before and you gave up, and you're all at a webinar trying to plan your New Year's resolution, so you're probably not unaware of having a desire to change. So then contemplation is just kind of like a step above that. You're like recognizing, you're like, okay, like I feel like something needs to change, or like that you have something that you want to change, but you're maybe not sure how to do it. You don't really have a plan yet. You're just like, kind of like just recognizing that need. So the next is that preparation. This is where you're starting to plan, like just starting to plan, but you don't have like actually have that plan in place yet, and you're not taking any action towards that goal. So next is your actual action stage. This is where you have that plan, you're kind of like starting to work on it, and you're trying to make that new behavior a permanent part of your life. And the next is maintenance stage. So you continue that action, and just know that whenever you're in maintenance stage, there's always a potential for relapse. So there's also sometimes like this theory is listed with like a 6th stage, and we put the 5 because like that's what I see most common is just like these 5. So cool. So another part of motivation is social determination theory. So you kind of may be wondering like, well, how, like how do you know like how to move yourself through all those stages? And this will kind of like help make sense of that. So 2 different types of motivation. There's intrinsic and extrinsic. First one we're going to go over are the intrinsic factors. So if you are intrinsically motivated to do something, you're doing it purely for the activity itself. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it makes you feel competent, satisfied. There's nothing else that is pushing you to do it. You just do that activity because like you like it, it's fun. So another part, which I know there's like, so there's intrinsic motivation, and there's kind of like 3 subtypes of intrinsic. The first one that is 100% truly intrinsic is also called intrinsic. Then the next 2 are kind of like, it's like a continuum, and this will make more sense since we have like all 5 of them up. But the next one that's still intrinsically motivated, but a little less so, is going to be called integrated. So you're motivated to do something because it's part of your identity. So for example, fitness, I'm just going to use fitness as an example for this whole thing. So I really like to lift, specifically like Olympic lifting is one of my favorites. I do it because it's fun, it's enjoyable. There's not really anybody that's like telling me I have to do it. Fitness in general though, another thing that's motivating me to do it is I feel like it's part of my identity. So I identify with being a personal trainer, with a kinesiology major. So I guess I would almost feel like a little bit hypocritical if I didn't exercise and I didn't like partake in those exercise activities. So that's just another area of motivation. And then last, identified. Now try not to get these mixed up with integrated, since integrated is part of identity and identified is not. It can get kind of confusing. So identified is like what your values are, but it's like the outcome of the activity. So an example of this, if you want to go with fitness, is that some people will like maybe exercise because they're like, maybe they like to lift weights because they like getting stronger. So if that is like their number one main reason for exercising or for lifting weights, they would have a more identified motivation. So next we'll get on to, and then kind of to summarize like these 3 is like, these are your I want tos. So you're motivated to do the activity because you want to do it. So next we'll get on to the extrinsic factors. So the first one's going to be introjected. So this could be pressure from yourself or others. So if it's pressure from yourself, it could be like maybe, I don't want to say necessarily like made up, but kind of like maybe you think people are going to look down on you if you don't do the activity. So for example, maybe you have a roommate or someone that's like super into like cooking and healthy eating. So maybe you're motivated to eat healthier because you feel like your roommate might judge you. So that would be a more extrinsic motivation that's introjected. And then last, external. So this would be the most extrinsic that you could get. And I kind of wish I could have put like a graphic on here, but like it's probably gonna be backwards for all of you because you're like looking at a camera, but external would be over here and then like intrinsic's here. So if you're externally motivated, that's like 100% extrinsic. You'd be more like just feeling forced, like you don't want to do it at all. Just why that extrinsic side is like the I have to. It's like you just really don't have anything motivating you other than like, you know, like for example, like maybe if you don't like your job at all, like you go because, you know, you need to make money. That may be an external because you feel forced and you're just going for like that paycheck or something. So now kind of what to do with all that information. So you might be asking, well, which type is best for behavior change? So the more extrinsic motivation you have, the better. However, extrinsic motivation can be good for initiating behavior change, but it's not so good for maintaining that behavior change. And it's totally fine to have like a little bit of both. And even for like the same activity, you may kind of like from day to day or have like a mix of both and kind of like fluctuate of like which one dominates. You just want to have the majority of your motivation be from that intrinsic side. So then another question you might have is like, well, if I feel more extrinsically motivated, well, how do I shift my thinking so that I'm actually more intrinsically? How do I go from like, oh, I feel like I have to now I feel like I want to? So that's where we're going to get into next. So there are 3 areas that you need to increase or have a good sense of, a good feeling of, to feel more intrinsically motivated. And the first one's going to be autonomy. So you need to feel like you have choices. So if you feel controlled, you're likely to not feel like you're very autonomous. And you want to be careful of this because you also don't want to have too little structure, because if you don't have enough structure, so kind of like think of those SMART goals that we talked about earlier. Not enough structure, you won't have the tools to actually like make your goal on time. So you want to give yourself options and ways to kind of like just feel like you're in control. So an example of this, using a fitness example, maybe you're like, okay, I want to like strength train twice a week. So a way you can give yourself autonomy within that is maybe you say, okay, I'm going to plan to go like Monday, Wednesday. But maybe something happens, you know, you get busy, you have an exam, you get sick or something. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go like Tuesday, Thursday instead, something like that. So you just gave yourself a choice, but you still stuck to like that structure of 2 days a week. So then competence. So you also want to make sure that you feel competent. And pretty much the theme for this is that if you follow SMART goals, you're most likely going to be increasing all these aspects we're talking about. But with competence, you want to make sure that you're using positive self-talk. So expect trial and error. I wanted to be careful in not saying like expect failure. So I don't really like saying like fail, because I feel like that just has such a negative connotation to it, of like it just sounds bad. Like trial and error, like you're probably going to have to like try different things with your motivation, with your goal programs, and like that's totally fine. Another way you can increase your competence is maybe getting help, like I said earlier, from some kind of a professional, whether that be like a dietitian, a personal trainer, or a therapist. So depending on like whatever your goals are, that can really help, because they can give you those guidance, that tools on how to break your goal down into manageable steps. And then relatedness. So this could be feeling related with like your coach or whoever that professional is that's helping you achieve your goal, related to like your family, friend, like that social circle around you. So just kind of in general feeling like you just feel related to your social circle. All right, so then some kind of barriers to motivation, essentially going to be the opposite to everything we just talked about. So like if you feel really controlled to the point where the activity is not fun, that's going to shift that motivation more from intrinsic, taking it to that extrinsic side. Lack of social support, that's a really big one. So if the people that you feel are most close to you don't really support your behavior change, that's going to make it a lot more difficult to actually keep up with it. And a perceived lack of time. So the reason I put perceived is sometimes maybe we just need to kind of adjust that like T with the SMART goal to be able to make time for our goal. So you may think that you don't have enough time for the goal, and maybe you don't have enough time at that moment to do your goal in like the exact amount of time that you want to, but you can still make progress with what you have, if that makes sense. So then lack of energy, this is probably like a really big one too, because it's going to make achieving goals really difficult, and kind of staying balanced with those 6 dimensions of well-being that we talked about. It's going to help hopefully with that lack of energy. So like making sure that you're sleeping enough, that you're eating well, exercising, all of those different things. Seeking professional help when you need it to maybe figure out why, if there's like an imbalance with why maybe you don't have energy. And then giving up after failure. Talked about this a little bit in the last slide, but I'm going to like go into a little bit more. So I want to like reframe failing into saying more like trial and error. So using positive self-talk is huge, and it's going to be a very big key to your success. So an example I use, and this might be like a little bit of a dramatic example, but I just wanted to be really like obvious in how I'm using this. So let's say you're signed up for a group fitness class that meets twice a week, and for whatever reason, you missed your class twice that week. So you missed, the class that whole week, and you're like, dang, maybe I should just drop out. Like, obviously I don't have time for this. Instead of thinking that, you could be like, okay, I've been going to every class or like most of the classes for the last 4 weeks. Think about like what changed about that week. Were you sick? Like maybe you needed that time to rest so you can feel energized and ready to go for the next week. So anytime that you feel or you're noticing that you're not meeting those goals, that's when if you have like that personal trainer, dietitian or whatever, you want to like reach out to them. You're like, hey, like I just feel like something's not working, and they can help you kind of like problem solve and talk through what else might be going on in your life that's making it hard for you to accomplish those goals. And if you're not kind of seeking that professional help and you're doing this more on your own, you can have this positive self-talk of just trying to frame things in more of a question, not like attacking yourself. Definitely don't want to do that. Never like attack yourself. Always keep it positive. Just like kind of like talk to yourself, which it might feel kind of weird at first. Like I know when I first started doing this, like you might feel like a little bit weird, but it definitely like just changes your whole outlook, and you feel a lot better instead of kind of like that first example that would make you feel pretty like, well, at the end of it. But at the second one, you might be more like, yeah, all right, cool, I got this. And then you're like, you're back on that fitness train. All right, so kind of like a summary and some other helpful tips. These are things that like I just kind of thought of that didn't really like fit to have like their own slides. So I kind of like threw them at the end, essentially. So again, SMART goals, huge, super important. Identifying what stage of change you are in is also going to be helpful in like knowing like how to fuel your motivation. Identifying your social support network. So you really want to know who is going to kind of like help you with your goals, and your social support, they don't necessarily have to like, you know, like maybe if getting more fit is a goal. Being part of your support network doesn't necessarily have to mean like they're going to the gym with you and stuff, but maybe they're like asking you like, hey, you know, like how are your fitness goals going? Or like they're curious, or they're just like happy for you to hear your goals. So just people that aren't like negative about your goals at all. That's mostly what that means. So then determining if you need professional to help with your goals, you know, like sometimes you don't always have like the money to afford, you know, like a personal trainer or things like that. So just trying to determine if you really need it or not, and what you can do on your own. And then make the activity fun. This is like probably kind of underrated, but it's like a huge, huge important thing, is like you want to really choose something that's fun. So again, like going back to fitness, you want to, so ACSM, the American College of Sports Medicine, has certain guidelines for like how much strength training you should do a week, how much aerobic activity you should do a week. And like hitting all of those in a week was like great. That's definitely a goal you should work up towards. But like maybe if you're just first starting out, like you don't work out like at all, and maybe you, let's say maybe you absolutely hate strength training, like you probably don't want to just go right into just like lifting weights at the gym. That may be more discouraging, and then you may associate exercise with that kind of like, oh God, this sucks. So, you know, try something that's fun. Just anything that's like remotely close to your goal, as long as it's something you like. And that's something where, you know, having a personal trainer, because I know like I do this a lot with clients, is like asking them like, what have you done in the past that's fun? What did you like? And trying to tailor as much as I can what they've done before and what they like with what their goals are and what those like ACSM guidelines are, to try to like match all those as close together as I can. But yeah, definitely make the activity fun. And if it's not fun, you know, try something else. You can kind of like frame it and try to think of it as being more fun, or you may need to try like a completely different activity, and that's okay too. And then really immerse yourself in the activity. So there's like kind of a lot of philosophy behind this one. So kind of like read about it, maybe follow some inspirational people that you really like on social media, if like that's your thing. Just really kind of get to know the activity of whatever goal you're trying to achieve. And then don't focus on how long it takes you to achieve it. Focus on what you gain along the way. So you've probably heard quotes like, you know, it's not about where you get, it's like about the journey or something.
It's not the destination,
Yeah,
it's the journey.
Or something like that. So yeah, let's say that's definitely pretty true. That's something I think about a lot. So you're really focusing on like, you know, it kind of goes back to those dimensions of well-being, like you're thinking about like what you're learning, all these things that you're gaining along the way, not just like how long it's taking you to get to that goal. And then also don't do too much too soon. So this is, I would say, pretty relevant too with fitness. So I've had clients that have like come to me, and I really appreciate them being like really gung-ho about being like, all right, I want to go to the gym like 3 days a week, and like this time I'm going to do this and that, and like all this tons of stuff, and maybe they haven't really done much to begin with. And kind of what's problematic about that, and if you're kind of wondering, well, like, how can you do too much fitness too soon? Like, that doesn't make sense. Kind of where that can be problematic is your body kind of like needs time to adapt to all like the physiological things that are happening when you start a new exercise program. And overtraining is definitely a thing for one. But if you kind of like get too many things going on at once, that can also get kind of mentally stressful as well as physically stressful. And when that happens, you know, you may start, you know, doing less and less and less until, you know, it's where like I've also had a lot of clients say that they have problems with their motivation where they like start out doing a ton and then they just kind of like slowly trickle off. So the biggest piece of advice I give to people that usually have that issue is pick, get used to maybe going to the gym like once a week, or find something that you truly, really enjoy, something that makes you feel intrinsically motivated as possible first. And then, especially once you feel to the point where you're like, oh man, okay, I'm just off work, like go to the gym. Once you feel that shift to like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go to the gym now. That's when you want to start actually adding on more activity, because you really want to get like that fun aspect. And if I had to pick a couple of things for you to take away, if you kind of like, you kind of forgot everything else, definitely like not doing too much at once and like making your goal fun to achieve. Those are like, and like the positive self-talk, those are like some of the most important things. I think, cool.
Yeah, and I think those important things can go with anything, not just fitness.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you don't want to do anything that's not fun.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions?
And also, like, if you have goals that you want to share, that like we could try to go over doing like the SMART goal thing.
What are some of the goals in the room? Does anyone want to share some of the goals that they have? Studying. Yeah, that's one of the fun tips I learned, they were doing a tour here on the Pullman campus, and I heard someone say, pick a spot that has nothing to do with anything else, like not the kitchen table because you eat there, not your bed because you sleep there, not in front of the TV. Pick a room, whether it's in your house or in the library, and that is your study area. So whenever you enter that area, your brain, your body is like, oh, it's study time. So I don't know. Do you have any tips for helping study goals?
Studying's like a really hard one, just because like everybody's learning styles and stuff like that are different. Like, so for me, I can't study somewhere that's like absolutely silent. I have to kind of have like, so I'm more of like a coffee shop person or like something that's just like I have to have things going on. I definitely agree with like the not at like the kitchen or like in bed thing, because I forgot which one of my classes I learned that in, but especially if you study in your room or like in your bed, it can make it harder to fall asleep because you kind of like associate bed with sleep. And so I actually stopped studying in my room, and it started being a lot easier for me to fall asleep. And then when I studied in like more of an office kind of like space, or just somewhere that like wasn't my bedroom, I like, when I was in that space, I felt a lot more like energized. So I used to like, okay, get in my room, I'm all comfortable, start studying, and I'm like, wow, I'm tired now. Like, so yeah. Other than that, studying, like, I would say my tips are probably gonna be better suited for like maybe more fitness stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, making studying fun too. I also, someone just told me recently that you were saying your roommate, kind of tells you the things she's learned and it teaches you. But I was told that when you teach someone something, that helps you relearn it as well. So like when you're studying for a test, if you're studying it on the cells of the body, if you just, pick your roommate or pick your child, your, whoever, and say, hey, let me tell you about these cells. And then you're explaining it. And so it kind of sets it into your brain, and then you kind of learn it as well.
Yeah, I'd say another thing I like to do is kind of like, if your professors don't give you study guides, make what they say in lecture into test questions. That's something that's really helpful for me. And also doing things like this webinar for me, since I'm still a student, is actually like super helpful, because all the stuff that I gave is based off of personal experience, but also these are things that I've learned in past classes. So just kind of like continuously talking about these things and sharing them with people has like helped my memory. So yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, I also like to make PowerPoints for some classes too, because they kind of like help entertain me. So sometimes I'll like make my
own. It's making it fun, because then you can do like the fade in and out. Yeah, so that's cool. Any other goals? I know too, mine is just being healthy. You always just want to, that's, I think, everyone's number one thing. And I had to stop telling myself no. Like when you want to be healthy, you're like, no candy, no sugar, no,
Yeah.
you know, and then that makes you just want it even more. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well I can have one. I'm not gonna tell myself no. I'm just gonna do moderation. So.
Yeah, and another good thing is like if you're kind of like more of those dietary type goals, is like instead of thinking of restrictions, is kind of along the lines of like that positive self-talk. It's like you're not taking something away, maybe like doing a switch. So maybe you're trying to like eat less ice cream or something. So maybe saying like I'm gonna switch ice cream with like yogurt or something else, and then like also thinking of maybe like just some of the health benefits you get out of the food. So like there's a lot of psychology involved with a lot of this, like just thinking about what you're putting into your body and like what that food is like giving you, and that's more of like health belief model, which is like another behavior change. It's more specific. I went with the one that I showed just because it's a little more like broad. But yeah, see if there's any advice for how to
transition from preparation to action.
Yeah, so let's say getting those like goals, so actually brainstorming your goals and then setting a plan, that's really like what's going to help with that. And then working on your motivation. So sometimes like, I'm trying to think how to like word this, sorry. So yeah, I guess I would say first step, you're going to want to actually identify what your goal is and have a plan to achieve it. And then figure out what's kind of like why do you want to achieve that goal? So kind of like going back to those intrinsic and extrinsic factors. So if you kind of like, without even looking at it, maybe just like write down, okay, like I want to do this goal because of like this, this, and this. And then if you look back and you're like, yeah, I feel like I'm pretty intrinsically motivated, then you're probably pretty good to go into that action stage and have that action stage actually go into the maintenance stage. But then if you're kind of like, I've got a lot more external factors, then you might kind of like want to take a step back and work on increasing like those areas of competence and autonomy and relatedness that we talked about to help move you then from like that action to maintenance. Hope, does that answer?
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. So it's just like a little hard without knowing like the really specific goal, but yeah.
Yeah, I always find, it's hard sometimes, but if you can find people, whatever your goal is, if you can find people to do it with you, that always helps. So that's your external, right? Yeah. Someone else outside helping you, or like you're saying trainer and everything, right? So even just having your friend help you, or say, I know too, some people are competitive. So if you make it a competition, that always helps your goals too. I can get an A, you can't, so I'm going to study. Okay, so we have anything else? We're going to kind of wind down for the night, unless anybody has any more questions. Being more confident. So, is that a goal, being more confident, maybe? So how would you help with that?
I would say like just a lot of positive self-talk. That would be one thing. I guess it kind of depends on like what you're trying to be more confident about. So like if it's more like socially confident, it's like a little harder for me to get like more confident with talking. Okay. So say maybe like people that you do already feel confident about, or not confident about, like confident with, talking to them, maybe asking for like feedback on there's definitely been things that like I've been a little self-conscious about as I've like done more public speaking. Like for one, you all probably notice this, I talk a lot with my hands, and at first it really bothered me, but like I don't really care anymore, so I feel like it makes it a little more entertaining, hopefully. But yeah, so being more confident with talking, and say sometimes just like if you can, maybe like filming yourself talking and like watching that. I know that's like super scary for a lot of people. Like I know I still don't like watching myself talking. I'm like, nope. So that can be helpful, but just in general, like a lot of positive self-talk. So if maybe like public speaking is more what makes you nervous, just kind of like remembering that like any little things that you may think that are like really noticeable to yourself that you do when you're talking to like a room full of people, like they probably don't even notice, most likely. And even if they do notice, they may think about it for like a second and then they're gonna forget about it. Like it's not like something someone's gonna remember, like, oh, they like stuttered on that one word. Like people definitely don't remember stuff like that. So just kind of like being mindful of that, like, I mean, that's helped my confidence with talking. I hope that kind of
And there's always classes too.
True. Yeah.
I know. That same as fitness. You want to take a class.
Yeah.
It helps you out too. And he said awesome.
Yeah.
They said awesome. Okay, perfect. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending. Again, I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties. I appreciate you all coming over to this platform and joining us tonight. So, and remember to always look at connections.wsu for more events. Tomorrow night, we're cooking with executive chef Jamie Callison. We're gonna learn how to make some pasta from scratch, as well as some other yummy things for Valentine's Day. So you can join in on that or any of our other events. But have a great night, and thank you everybody for joining us.